Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're just going to be waiting for people to start joining us, inshallah, and then we will start. And hopefully we are now live on YouTube and also Facebook. So, Sheikh, we're just going to wait for about a minute or two, and then we will start our session, inshallah.
Inshallah.
And those of you who are joining us on YouTube and also Facebook, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to type them up, and we will see all your questions. And inshallah, if they are relevant to the topic, we will bring them up, and you can ask questions to any one of us. And just to welcome our Sheikh or Molana Zubair Mangera, who's joined us from Blackburn. Am I right? Blackburn?
Yes, that's right.
I always get confused between Blackburn and Preston. There may be some reason behind that, but yes, the Sheikh is from Blackburn. Right. Right. So just one last quick check. Molana Zubair, can you hear me clearly enough?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Jazakallah. Okay, I think because it is 1 minute past our time, we will just give it another one, and then we will inshallah start. Those of you who have already started coming in and joining in, remember this is an interactive session, so you are more than welcome to ask any questions. If you have any burning questions right now, you may put them forward to us. We are also waiting for Ustadh Danyaal to join us as well, who's just having a few issues with his technology, but he will be joining us soon as well. Right. So in the meantime, any questions, please do go ahead and ask, and that's why we're here, inshallah. And as you all know, we're normally doing this on Monday at 5:30 p.m., but this week we've changed it to Sunday. And one of the reasons is we have a special guest here all the way from Blackburn, and we will tell you about him a bit more in a minute, inshallah. And as you're waiting as well, inshallah, if you like to keep updated on the different things that we're doing over the daily sessions, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll be updated on all of our sessions. At the same time, if you are more adept to Facebook, then do like our page or whatever is to be done there, and then inshallah you can follow us there as well. Okay, I think we will now begin. Ustadh Danyaal has joined us as well. Assalamu alaikum, Ustadh Danyaal. Jazakallah for joining us. We were just about to start as you came into the virtual room. So inshallah, I think we will begin. I will just a few ground rules, inshallah. So jazakallah all of you for joining us, all of our visitors, either if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, jazakallah for joining us. And as we've mentioned before, and as with all of our sessions, we would like this to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions in relation to special educational needs, you can ask any one of the speakers. Do mention their name. Today we have a special guest with us. His name is Molana Zubair Mangera. He is with us all the way from Blackburn. So Jazakallah Sheikh for being here with us and taking out your time to be here. I'd also like to say Jazakallah to Ustadh Danyaal for being here as well, taking out his time. And Ustadh Danyaal will inshallah introduce Molana Zubair Mangera in more detail in regards to special educational needs, and also the madrasa that he has co-founded, Tuyoorul Jannah, which is a very interesting name, the birds of paradise. So hopefully at some point Molana Zubair will also tell us why he came up with this very, very interesting, beautiful name as well. So over to you, Ustadh Danyaal, if you can take us from here, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Just going to introduce Molana Zubair. So Molana Zubair is a founding partner at Tuyoorul Jannah. He graduated as an alim from Darun Bari in 2005, and he has been since striving to serve the local community and has taught in a variety of settings. So alongside his work at Tuyoorul Jannah, Molana also serves as a social worker in the Lancashire area, having completed his BA in social work at UCL LAN in 2010. In addition to this, he has been working for the Lancashire County Council as a SENDO, Special Educational Needs and Disability Officer, since 2015, and lately working for the Learning, Disability and Autism team. So, Jazakallah khair, Molana, for joining us today. Oh.
Jazakallah for having me.
You're muted.
Oh, yep, there you
go. So, Molana, I just wanted to get a bit of insight into sort of the history of your madrasa and the story behind it. What was the intentions behind forming madrasa solely on focusing on SEN? What was the idea behind that?
Okay, I'll start with the name. So my brother-in-law, my sister's wife, Dalha Patel, he's got special needs. He's got an illness called microcephaly, which is a developmental delay of the brain. So it runs in their family. So lots of their family members have that as well. Now, they used to have a Molana who used to come to their house regularly in Ramzan especially, and he used to always say, "Ye Jannat ki chiriya hai, look after them." Right, so that's where the name actually came from. So my wife and when we were thinking of names, then we thought, well, Tuyoorul Jannah, which translates as birds of paradise. So that's where it came from, the name itself. The thinking behind it, or how the actual madrasa started, was back in 2007, which seems ages away now. We thought, well, there's a need for people with special needs to have something as well. Now, my brother-in-law, when he was going to mosque, he didn't have the best of education in terms of the one-to-one that's required, or a different way of teaching. So we went to several different mosques. Unfortunately, they weren't able to facilitate for it. So at the time, my wife, she was at a special needs school called Newfield School, which is a special needs school just on top of Shadworth Road, for those people who are aware of it, in Blackburn. Now, at the time, they used to have not just severe learning disabilities, but quite a range of pupils. So we used to have mild learning disabilities, all the way to severe autism as well. Now, we went to the head teacher there and asked, look, would we be able to run some classes here? Because my wife was doing her final year placement there at the school head teacher was fine with it, and they said, look, you can run classes here. So at the time, there was four of us: myself, my wife Rubina, Malaysia Khathrada, and a sister called Sister Fazila Umaji, which, all of them, Sister Fazila Umaji is actually moved down to London. We don't forget her because she was part of the original group. The Malaysia Khathrada is part of the trustees, who we take regular mashwara from. So that was the core first group of teachers, and we had 6 students. And at the time, the school, I would say, they had a majority of Muslim students, and unfortunately, there was, they've never had anything like this. They don't really teach Islamic education, so we thought, okay, let's try something with them. So we would do once a week on a Wednesday, or perhaps Tuesday, but on our day off from uni, because we were all university students at the time. We couldn't commit that much time.
Just a small question, Molana. Was Newfield School a special needs school, or was it a mainstream school?
It's a special needs school.
It was
The field. Yeah, so they had all the facilities there. So in terms of wheelchair access, the TAs as well. So they used to have TAs who were specifically trained for the students that we were going to teach. So we started doing a 1 hour session. The first session that we had, we focused on about Hajj. So we did a very practical version of Hajj. So we made them make the actual Kaaba itself. We talked about it. So our session would be initially we'd start by doing Surah Fatiha and then do talk about what Islam is, what Hajj is, and then actually do a practical. So we did that. So they made the Kaaba itself, and then through the weeks we continued doing that, and then we did. I made them wear the ihrams, and then they acted out the whole Hajj. So they did the sleeping and Muzdalifah and everything. We also did the stoning, which was quite fun. So we started doing that, and then it took off. And then the following year, when we were going to enroll, we had a flurry of people contacting us saying that please, can you have our children as well? And we were like, look, we're only doing this on a voluntary basis. We can't do more than 6 students because we've only got this many teachers, and we were sort of doing a rota at the time. We would do 2 teachers at a time, and then we would have 1 or 2 of their TAs depending on the session itself. So that's how we started, and then once we graduated, we thought, look, we've had loads of people contacting us wanting something to happen. So we then rented a building, the Al Howard Children's Centre, where we were doing once a week, and then from there we just continued growing and growing and growing and growing, and now we're running a service which is 7 days a week, all the way through from 5:15 to 7:15 Monday to Friday. Saturday is from 10:15 till Zohar, so about 12:30, and then on a Sunday we start some sessions in the community at 11 o'clock actually, and then at the centre from 2 till 4 o'clock. We're currently maximum capacity. We've got 47 students, ranging from severe learning disabilities, so those who are non-verbal, those who just sign, to we've even got some with visual impairment, and some who are on Asperger's syndrome, a spectrum as well. So we've got a wide variety. Unfortunately, we've actually had to say no to quite a few students this year, because we've just not had the capacity. We have been fundraising for another building as well, which I'll probably touch upon if you want to know about later on as well. So that's where we are at the moment. We've got 47 students, alhamdulillah, throughout the whole week that we teach. So the way we teach isn't each student won't come every day. They'll come once a week only. We have some students who come twice a week, but it's an hour session. Very intense work in the sense that we have very focused amount of work that we have to try and get
Molana
through.
Zubair?
Ji.
Molana Zubair?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Your voice is cutting a bit. Can you hear that? Is it the same for you, Ustadh Danyaal?
He's clear for me,
now I
Chef.
can hear you. If you could repeat the last maybe 10 seconds of what you said, because it was slightly distorted.
Okay.
I think. Sorry.
Where was
it's good for you. Okay, that's fine then. That's fine.
Yeah. Where was I up to? Oh, I think we've lost Sheikh Hamid. Have we lost Sheikh Hamid?
Maybe his internet is playing up, perhaps.
Sheikh Danyaal, shall I carry on?
I think you're good to continue. Let's just see what's happening with Sheikh. But can you hear me okay, Sheikh? It's not an issue with the platform. Molana Zubair.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I think Sheikh Hamid we're struggling with
connection, perhaps.
His mic is on mute as well, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, do carry on, inshallah. Do carry on. I can hear everything.
Oh, right,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, so where I was up to was, yeah, so the classes that we run is once a week. So each student will come only once a week. Now, the structure of the class is we won't have any more than 6 students in one class, and we have one main teacher and usually 2 staff if there's 6 students. Majority of our sessions are actually below 6, so we have groups of 4, groups of 5, groups of 3, quite a few one-to-ones, and then the session itself is broken down into almost typically 4 parts, where you've got the first 15 minutes we do du'as, kalimat, surats. Then the second will be, if they're learning the qaida, then we'll do the qaida. If they're learning Quran, then we do the Quran. If they're not, then we just extend the activity a little bit longer to make sure that we're doing something which is meaningful to them. So the second 15 minutes will be the qaida itself, and that's taught in a very interactive way. So we use flashcards, use the iPad, different means that might engage the child itself. So sometimes we use Play-Doh. You'll find a lot of our ideas or a lot of the work that we do on our social media platforms and on our internet and our website as well. And then the third 15 minutes will be the actual, if we're talking about a topic, so for example, if we're talking about Ramadan, so we'll talk about Ramadan and then we'll do an activity related to Ramadan. Now, it's not necessary that that's one lesson and that's it, it's done. We might run this lesson several weeks, and then we continue that on just to reinforce the learning one, and secondly just to make sure that it's with it's in their mind as well, and then we'll elaborate on it as well. So it's not just about just the topic of Ramadan. There might be a little bit more in the second session that we add. So what does it mean by Ramadan? Why is it? We'll add a little bit extra to it as well. So that's our sessions in a nutshell, but a lot of it is very hands-on. So we'll always have an activity within the session that we're doing.
Yeah. So there's I think a lot of similarities. I think sort of with your story in particular, that sort of resonates with myself. So as you may or may not know, I'm a speech and language therapist. So part of my motivation in getting into speech therapy in particular was that my sister has a learning disability, sort of moderate to severe learning disability. So that sort of gave me that level of awareness in terms of what disabilities are, if you like, and insight into speech and language therapy in and of itself. And I think as well, in terms of how you operate, it's quite similar to us in the sense that our kids as well have one session either a Saturday or Sunday, because we're just a weekend madrasah. They'll be here either just on a Saturday or Sunday. What I found quite interesting, Molana, was that your sessions are just for 1 hour for your kids. What was the thinking behind that?
Thinking behind that is now a normal child or neurotypical child that we would say as a normal child would their concentration span is 20 minutes. Now 20 minutes, getting 20 minutes out of a normal or out of a special needs child is even harder. So you have to always keep the lesson very active, lots of different activities to do, lots of things to do, and there's a lot of planning behind it as well. So it's not just about like when I used to teach Maktab, it was a case of you just pick up a book, quickly look over what you're going to teach, and then go in, and you just sit there and teach. It's not really that hard, but this is about lesson planning, how you're going to do, what resources you're going to use, and there's a lot more planning that needs to be done, and you can't just wing it really. So I think that's why one reason is the attention span, and then if we did it 2 hours, we're not really going to maximize the learning from that child. And then obviously then you have to also plan in accordance as well. So if you've got 2 hours worth of work to plan for, that's going to be quite a lot. And then obviously we don't want to burn out our teachers as well. So the teachers, you know, all our teachers, alhamdulillah, most of them are either school teachers or TAs working in schools who have decided that they don't actually want to do the teaching role, but want to just take a little bit of a step back. So I think more or less everyone is got a full-time day job, so this is something they do on the side. So obviously you have to balance that as well. You don't want to be overloading the staff to do, saying, right, I want you to do this much lesson planning.
Yeah. And again, yeah, it's very, very similar to sort of how we run as well, in the sense that a lot of our madrasa teachers as well have full-time jobs and or might be coming into madrasa on a Saturday and Sunday and doing this as sort of supplementary work to their teaching work and what they do on a Monday to Friday, if you like.
Yeah.
I think looking at in terms of the madrasa side of things, and this is something which me and Molana Hamid has been sort of speaking about over the last few weeks. What do you see as a way forward for madrasas when it comes to SEN provision? It's quite a difficult question, and it's one which me and Molana have been speaking about over the last few weeks.
It is an interesting question. Now, this is something which we've acknowledged, and one of the reasons we do teacher training. So myself and my wife, we deliver teacher training to lots of makatib. We have done quite a few throughout the country. I think for us, there's two brands of it. There's two strands. Sorry, one is the severe end of special needs. You know, your severe autism, people who are non-verbal. Now that's one area, and then you've got the ones which are ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, for those who don't know, and those people. Those are mainstream. Now, for us, it was those students are the ones which we need to make sure that the mainstream madrasas are focusing on, and how to teach them, or what to do differently. And I think our philosophy is, because special people need to be taught in a special way. Now, for us, that's exactly what it is. Your child with ADHD can't be taught the same as, you know, Ahmed, who can recite beautifully and he's doing really well, because this child, he can't. He processes things differently, he works differently, and you have to tap into that, and you have to try to tap into your strength. So one of the reasons we've done the teacher training is to sort of get that message out and equip the teachers who are there. Because what we've found is lots of students or lots of teachers, they don't have the confidence. They think, well, how do we teach? What do we do? How do we do it? So it's just like, where do we start from? So I think that's what we've started doing when we've gone into madaris who want to start up a special needs madrasa, is give them the advice and say, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you teach them. Forget, you know, we shouldn't say forget special needs children who are on the severe end. Those you need a special skill set to do as well. You know, you can't just teach them. Any old person can't just teach those children. But my concern and my worry is those students who are akil and who are baligh and actually just need to be taught that the education, the Islamic education, in a different way. Those are the ones that, in my opinion, we will be asked on the Day of Judgment. And when I speak in trainings, I say this quite openly. I say, look, what face are we going to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if he says to us that Ahmed, he needed to be taught? What did you do? We didn't do anything because he's special needs, so we left him. No, it shouldn't be. What if we look at our mainstream schools? Look at how much provisions they make or put in place for anybody with just a little bit of special needs. You know, those who are on a very low banding. Yeah, they'll put everything in place. Make sure they've got additional staffing. The research are different. You know, the way they're taught is totally different, and this is what we need to do, in my opinion. We need to differentiate between the two students. We can't just teach everyone the same way that we used to teach. And I think for me, that's the main thing, is where we get madrasas on board and say, right, we need to step away from this 30 students in a classroom and everyone being taught exactly the same way. We need to teach them and say, okay, right, this particular student has this need. He needs to be taught in a special way. How is this special way? And I'm happy to share that. And from our experience, how we've seen it is one of the best ways you can get this information is go to the schools and liaise with their schools, whichever school they are, liaise with their senko, liaise with the pastoral department, and they will happily give you resources. They'll happily liaise with you and talk to you and say, oh, this is what this is what works for him, this is what works for her, try this, try that. And without a word of light, we've all the schools that we've always been to just get a little bit of that communication or establish that relationship with them. They've opened the doors to us and said, come in as many times as you want, we're more than happy to help you. And if you get their education, health and care plan, which most special needs children will have, it'll have all of it there. It'll have the strategies that are used or that it can be used, what resources are being used, what works for that child, what doesn't work for the child. It's all there. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel and start everything and say, well, all we need to do is translate that into the Arabic language, and that's all it is. Because learning that English language is the same as learning the Arabic language. You're learning alif bata, and it's the same in A, B, C, D, or whatever the way they do it now. Yeah, so it's exactly the same, and that's what they need to remember, I think. Sorry about the long-winded answer.
No, that's fine. Can I just bring some questions in from our audience? So what I'll do is I'll bring up two questions, and then we can start answering them as well. So one of the first questions is, do both or either madrasas follow a curriculum as such? That's the first question. The second question that looked interesting was, I'm just bringing up now, is this one. That some children with special needs can easily be integrated within mainstream madrasas. However, madrasas have got to accept these children and then differentiate for them, which most don't want to do.
Yeah. Jazakallah Rubina bin for that. She in itself might be someone you might want to get out. I know she'll probably not want me to call her out, but she's one of our teachers, a brilliant teacher, mashallah. She has a child with autism as well, and she's had her own struggles in trying to get access to mainstream madrasas. And again, it's exactly that. It's about differentiation, and we need to, as teachers in mainstream madrasas, we need to understand that each child has to be taught differently, and that's how this person will learn, and this is how this person will learn. And I think I would add to that is we need to learn that we need to go at each individual's pace. Don't try and say everyone has to finish the second para by this month, everyone has to finish the third para by this month. If one child isn't going on that pace, then what's the point in belittling that child and knocking their self-confidence, their self-esteem, saying you're not going according to everyone else, you're getting behind. We need to make sure that's where the teachers, I think one of the points I want to get across is that we need to really get out of this mindset of it has to be done the way it was done previously. We've got lots of things here, that we can use to our advantage. Let's use them, technology, different ways of learning. Sometimes it's just about timings as well. I can give you an example. When I was in mainstream, when I used to have a special needs child in my class, what I used to say to him is, look, come 15 minutes early, right? I'll do your sabak on a one-to-one basis, and then I'm going to tell you, learn that in the classroom, and then at the end I'm going to do another 15 minutes with you and I'll listen to that sabak. So we used to do it differently. So it's about just amending your time. And in a mainstream setting, again, how that can work as well is you can use your first. So if you start at 5 o'clock, your special needs children, you can give them the first slot because they're going to be more, they'll have their attention there. So whilst they're fresh and eager to learn, get them first, and then the rest of your class you can tell them to learn their sabak or just go over it. You've got 15 minutes to settle them down, get them to settle down, and then you give your attention to your mainstream student, and then special needs children, and then teach them, and then you've got your one-to-one there, and then you can carry on with your rest of your class. It's just about adapting the way we're teaching and learning within the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Molana.
Jazakallah, Molana. Can I just add a point that a lot of times, people...
Oh, we lost Sheikh Hamid again.
Sheikh Hamid, you're gone.
Yeah, am I back? Can you hear me again?
Yeah, you're back.
Yep.
You're back.
I think I've got some internet connection, connection issues. Yep.
You need to.
Okay, just wanted to add one thing that people sometimes think that when we're applying all these. Yeah, inshallah, yes, definitely. Can you hear me now?
Oh, no, it's gone again.
You went.
Well, Hamid.
Can you hear me now still, or?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, Sheikh, do carry on. That's fine. Do carry on. Do carry on.
Go on, Ustadh Danyaal. You were mentioning a point to add.
Can you hear me now, or is it gone? Otherwise, I think Sheikh, if you can just carry on leading it, I will just listen into it.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the point about the curriculums and not having a set curriculum set for everybody, I think that resonates quite well with our madrasah as well. In terms of going at students' individual pacing, we acknowledge as well that everyone has their own abilities, if you like, and that not everyone will finish the qaida at the same pace. We really focus a lot on tajweed for all our students, be they SEN or not. So I think following the curriculum, again, there's no bespoke curriculum, I think, and Molana can correct me if I'm wrong here. We do loosely follow the Suffolk Academy syllabus, but that's very loosely. When it comes to Islamic studies, it's differentiated per class and per class teacher.
In terms of sorry, Ustadh, are you there? Ustadh Danyaal?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yep. Sure. Have you finished your point?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. I don't know whether you can do phone calls in. Can you do phone calls in?
I have to ask Molana Hamid about that.
No, I think someone's tried to call. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I think just picking up on the point about the syllabus, we don't have a curriculum or we don't have a syllabus, a set syllabus at the moment. We also loosely follow Safar Academy books and some other content, but a lot of ours is very individual to the specific time of the month. So, for example, if it's something Shab Barat or something like that, so we might just cover something around that. About Muharram, depending on what time of the year as well. But we are in the process of actually putting a curriculum together, so we can really monitor it and say, okay, in the first year, this is the content that we're expecting to cover quite broadly, and then this is what in the second year will be. So that's what we're in the middle of putting together as well, inshallah. So this lockdown period is been a blessing in a way, because we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we are trying to put something together, inshallah, for other makatibs now as well.
Yeah, think that's also been one of Hamid's goals as well, to try and have perhaps not a bespoke curriculum per se, but maybe to have something which other madrasas could sort of follow as a sort of template in terms of sort of policies and things like that. What was the other point for the other question? I think it was a question. It was a comment about other madrasas not being able to follow. I'm not sure if I can load it up here. That was it. It's gone again.
There we go.
So some children with special needs can easily be integrated with mainstream madrasas. However, madrasas have got to accept these children in a different direction, which most don't want to do. Yeah, so I think we're both in agreement in terms of, number one, there has to be an awareness about SEN, because I think that's probably the first step, really, in terms of a lot of madrasas don't have this awareness of what special education needs are from even the sort of the preliminary level. And then when it comes to that sort of awareness, that mindset of just accepting that, okay, we need to put in a little bit extra effort in to make sure that we're catering for them. So once you can accept the mainstream students that you mentioned, just out of interest, Molana Zubair, how do you go about catering for the students who have sort of more severe special educational needs? Because we are a mainstream madrasa, and we sort of acknowledge that we are a mainstream madrasa, and we don't ever like to turn away anyone who does have more sort of severe special educational needs, if they have sort of severe autism, if they're non-verbal. But what we found is that parents come and they sort of observe their child, and we sort of give them a sort of trial period, as for all students really. But parents will often observe and see that, okay, they're not really able to cope in a sort of mainstream classroom, and the students themselves, the parents themselves say, okay, we sort of acknowledge that you're sort of a bit more mainstream, and that they might not be able to cater for our son or our daughter because they are a bit more severe. So a bit more insight in terms of that.
Okay, in terms of those who are non-verbal or those who are lower ability, shall we say? Now, what we focused on is trying to implement the sunnah. So du'as are something that they can all learn. Most of our students who have low ability, after a lot of repetition, so sometimes we might be just doing the first kalima for months and months and months. So they'll be learning the same first kalima over and over and over and over again. Azan similarly, or certain things. So we'll focus on that one outcome, and then they'll learn that over and over and over again. Obviously, we will try and make the lesson interesting by doing other things in that session as well. But there'll be certain parts of the session. So, for example, you've got your first kalima. We'll do that every single session. They do the du'as. They reinforce those every single session, so they learn those. So even what we found is even the lower ability students, they pick it up over time. So they learn that. The other thing that we focus on is, okay, they might not be able to pray the Quran, but they can certainly, act as a Muslim, act upon all the sunnats. So I always take a lot of inspiration from my students as well. So one of the parents, she texts me saying, Molana, I don't know whether she would like me to say the name of the student, but student's mom said he's just read the dua for looking at the moon. I said, subhanallah. I thought, yeah, I know I can put my hand on my heart and say, I know that there's probably a handful of times when I've actually prayed that dua, right? Everyone can do yes on themselves, yeah. But because we taught it and said, look, this is a sunnah as well to look at the moon and pray this dua, he implements it all the time and he says it. And so those kind of things, you can do it. Now, alhamdulillah, he's probably quite a high ability, but we've got other students who can make dua. They can sign it. So there's an app, and I don't know whether you've seen the book from Amin and Yasmin Limited, the BSL Islamic Science. Now in there's a sign for Bismillah, so it's like just like that. Now myself and Ali Majid, who's a student that we did, we used to do that like more or less weeks and weeks and months would go, and then I would think sometimes, is he getting it? And then one day his mom, I'm sure she texts saying, Subhanallah, today when we were eating, Ali just did the sign for eating, which is Bismillah. So that's what we taught him, because we know that he's not going to be able to pray the whole dua, but just pray Bismillah. And he did the sign, and he does it on a regular basis now. So mashallah, it's really inspiration that sometimes it's just those little things that you can teach them, and they can implement those things. And another student, again, I can give you loads of examples. Muhammad Ismail, he's non-verbal. He's a very limited vocab, shall we say, but he loves the azan, absolutely loves it. And what he does is, as soon as azan goes on, he'll pray along with it. It's not entirely clear, but you can make out what he's praying and what he's saying, and he'll sing along with it. And it's beautiful, because you just think, alhamdulillah, that's a child who normally would have just been said, well, sorry, we can't do anything for you. And that's, alhamdulillah, we feel really blessed. And I know all our staff feel the same way, that we're in a privileged position to be able to serve these special children. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. I don't just say it as lip service, but definitely we feel honored that we are in that position that Allah's chosen us to be able to serve this community.
Yeah, subhanAllah. It's, I think it's values which I think we all should hold. I think anyone who's working within the madrasa system should absolutely see this as a way of absolutely serving Allah Ta'ala's deen, if you like, via these special people, as you mentioned, Sheikh. I was actually making notes, Sheikh, about some of the things you're implementing, because it's key things which we can all learn from, I think. There's another point here. My child is 11 and has autism. We really want him to go to our local madrasa, but unfortunately they don't cater for special educational needs. Is there any way these mosques can be shown how important it is for even SDN children to be included in the madrasa? If SDN children can get support at schools, I don't know why can't we get teaching and support at madrasa? He was refused admission when he was 5 because of his needs, and since then he's only been to certain home mosques. Again, I think based on that, it's really about educating other madrasas and other makatib, and one of the things which your madrasa has been doing, Molana Zubair, is holding these training sessions for other madrasas, and like openly inviting them to come to these training sessions as well, which I think is really, really important. Alhamdulillah, we were approached by, in our locality, Waltham Forest Council of Mosques, to hold some form of training for the madrasas there. We had about maybe an hour slot or so just for SCN training, but that hour training also was I think an eye-opener for a lot of madrasa teachers in terms of what SCN were, how we should be catering for them, and I think more of these training sessions need to be taken place in terms of just opening up that mindset a little bit, if you like. I don't know if Mullah Hamid wants to add anything on that.
Can you hear me now, or is it still as
yes,
bad?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the points I wanted to mention earlier on, and it could be related to what we're saying now as well, that today there's this kind of idea, a notion that if we start using all these fun activities and engaging activities, which for special educational needs children is a must, it's a requirement, people have this idea that it's no longer a madrasa. Or are we leaving the traditional madaris? So I remember once a parent from our madrasa came to me and said that a friend of his asked him that, look, does this madrasa now, so our madrasa, Fatima Elizabeth, does it signal the end of traditional madrasas? So I had to tell him, actually, if we go back and read ulama like Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, and you will find that teaching through play is a concept that Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi came up with as well. So it's not just something that we're taking from the West, okay? Albeit a lot of what's happening in the West is stuff that's already happened in the Muslim world prior to any of this. So actually, it's about not going back, but it's going back completely to the traditional ulama who actually mentioned that, if we continuously just teach students all the way for like an hour, 2-3 hours, then that will kind of that will create tiredness within their thinking and their minds, and it will make them and force them to come up with excuses to forego their studies. So this is something that Imam Ghazali rahimahullah pushed on, and then he emphasized using games or using various activities as a form of teaching. And Imam Ghazali emphasizes in the sense that, he even said, don't teach your children for the first 7 years, okay? But if you are to teach them, then use games as a method to teach them. So I think it's very important that we understand and realize that, we've been stuck in this kind of bubble, which we need to come out of and realize the impact some madaris unfortunately have on the worldview of our children. Because something that I always mention is that these children, that the experience that they go through in a madrasa or a maktab, when they've passed their teenage and then they come of age and they're now ready to live their lives, they have a choice. They have a choice of either living the secular way of life, or they have a choice of following Islam as a way of life. And it all depends on their experience from the age of from as early as possible up to the age of college. And they have two systems in front of them. They have the secular schooling system, and then they have the madrasa system. If they have been given all their needs, especially special educational needs children, if they've been, and as Molana said earlier, that in schools they're given all the needs that they're required, and on the other hand, when they attend madrasa in the evening or on the weekend, then there's a lack of needs, there's lack of facilities, there's nothing there. So that kind of builds up in their experience of the difference between the secular and Islam. And I think that's why it's incredibly important that madrasas, that madaris really, really look back into things like special educational needs, and the very first thing is awareness of this, right? Because there's still madrasas, unfortunately, very unfortunately, still madrasas out there that treat children differently if they always make mistakes. Okay, they think that it's a behavior issue, or they'll think that it's a student not doing their homework. But behind all of that facade is a student who may have certain special needs. And that's why I think it's incredibly important that those madrasas who are trying to cater for special educational needs of children, that we get together and we speak about this as much as possible, as we are doing here with between Fatima Elizabeth and Tuyoorul Jannah, to ensure that no longer we remain quiet. And especially for parents, we need to do it with wisdom, but we need to raise our voices. I think that is the stage we're at, unfortunately. And there are many madrasas who are making a change, are making a difference. And those are the ones that need the support from parents. And I think, Molana, you mentioned earlier, and it was in my mind, that the kind of teachers that are teaching in these institutes are teachers who are already teachers at schools. They're already teaching assistants at schools, but they want to give back to the Muslim children, and they do that by teaching at these Darul Ulum, at these makatibs and these madrasas. So I think that's very important. That's key for madaris leadership. But actually, you know what? Until now, a lot of madaris have thought, okay, if someone's going to teach, they need to either be a hafiz. If someone's going to teach in a maktab, they have to be an alim or a alima or a hafidha. If someone's going to teach, they have to have a beard. Okay, so all these restrictions we've created for ourselves, not thinking actually there are so many people amongst the ummah who have such brilliant skill sets, which we need to use, which we need in our makatib, and especially for children to gain confidence when they see such Muslims teaching them who have such brilliant careers in their lives. So that's a few things that I was trying to mention before, but I couldn't because of the the bad internet that I had. But sorry about that, Sheikh. Sorry about the bit of technical issues that I've had.
No problem, Sheikh.
I
Yeah,
think
I think Ustadh Yasmin actually made a similar point to you, Molana Hamid, that teachers teaching in different makatib need a diverse skill set, if you like, which you mentioned. I think she mentioned here as well that I teach autistic kids through Lego therapy, which is excellent, mashallah. Molana Zubair, please continue.
Yeah, it was just a point about where you talked about that how we've not changed our ways. I could give you a good example. We had a student, or we still got a student, who went through, I think it was 5 or 6 different maktabs, and everyone used to say the normal stuff about he's a naughty child, he doesn't want to teach, he doesn't want to learn, he's lazy, the usual, yeah. And the reason, the real reason why, when he came to us and we said, well, what difficulties do you have? He goes, well, I've got dyslexia, so he needed a different color background. Now, what we did was the Quran he used to use, we used to take a picture of it, and on the iPad just put the color that was suitable for him, so it's like a bit of a yellowish kind of background, and that's all he needed to make him read better. And all this time, not one maktab picked up on it. I'm not saying that a maktab should have picked up on it, but it was just that little reasonable adjustment that was required for him, that was needed. And because we made that adjustment, he was able to pray, not perfectly, but he will be able to pray much better than he was. And it wasn't a case of he didn't want to learn. He wanted to learn, but he just couldn't, because he couldn't see what he was reading properly. And he used to have a reading ruler as well, and he used to keep forgetting that. But we started keeping one at the madrasah, so he didn't forget it. I said, okay, you read using this reading ruler, and then he started picking up. And again, mashallah, he had other talents, and he did a video, and I think it's on our website as well. He did a really nice hadith, and he did like a role play, but it's brilliant, because I thought, wow, this kid has got so much talent, but we're just not tapping into what he likes to do. He likes to be hands-on. He wants to do those kind of things rather than sitting. If you get him to sit down and say, right, pray Quran for 1 hour, he's not going to do it. It's not motivating enough for him. But just to do it in a different way, and that's that for me is exactly what you're saying, Ustadh. That they just need to be taught a little bit differently as well.
Yeah. When I was about just trying to pick up on there into what you mentioned there, it's such a simple adjustment in terms of having a different coloured background for that particular student. Yeah. I think it's getting over that mindset that it's that extra effort, it's that extra bit of hardship. It's such a little adjustment that you made for that one particular student, which I think needs to be sort of taken on board in terms of adjusting our mindsets, in terms of thinking, okay, it's not extra effort, it's not something that we can't cater towards. Yeah. Molana Hamid, there's lots of comments coming through. I can see going through on the stream. I feel like I've missed some of them. Are you able to go in through and see which ones?
Yeah. So some of them are just very important comments. That's why I've been putting some of them up on the screen. Yeah. Just the fact, Lego therapy. So that would be like a concept that most madaris are unfamiliar with. And if we were to present this as an idea to madaris, they'll think, why do we need Lego in a mosque? Why do we need Lego in a madrasa? But we need to go back to the prophetic method and go back to the Prophet ﷺ's masjid to realize that it was, there was so much going on in the masjid of Prophet ﷺ. And it's just a matter of going back and realizing the love Prophet ﷺ had for children and how that transpired in the way he dealt with children. And we spoke about this before as well, where Prophet ﷺ is praying salah with jama'ah in the masjid, and one of his grandchildren, Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhuma, they come and they climb on his back. He doesn't throw them off. No, he stays in sujood all the way, and then Sahaba later on inquire, why was your sajda so long? And he explained, because I had Hassan or Hussein radiallahu anhu on my back. And that shows us how we are supposed to be dealing with children. And when you go back to the Roman Empire, the Romans and the Greeks, they never had a concept of childhood. So for them, children and adults were treated the same. They had the same kind of struggle as adults. Whereas Prophet ﷺ has given us a concept of childhood, especially with bulugh and things like that, and the way he dealt with children. And we need to revive this. We've had this as part of our, this is part of our methodology, it's part of our civilization. We need to, and I've always mentioned this, that we went wrong somewhere. Maybe as a result of colonization, we moved back from all of this. We need to go back to the prophetic sunnah and try and realize and recognize from the Prophet ﷺ how we should be dealing with children. And this is what I always say to our staff at Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery, that we don't see Ofsted as an authority. Okay, madrasas may differ with that, and that's fine. For us, there is one authority. Okay, and the way we see it is, we say to our staff, you've got to imagine that every single day, as soon as you walk into your classroom, and by the time you walk out, you've got to imagine as though the Prophet ﷺ himself is sitting in the back watching your lesson. He's got his clipboard out. How would you deal with every single child in the classroom? Okay, those who have certain special needs. Would Prophet ﷺ, and I'm giving the human example because obviously Allah is always watching us. But when we add Prophet ﷺ, it gives it that human touch for us to understand better. That if the Prophet ﷺ was watching the way we teach the religion and the way that Prophet ﷺ brought to us, how would we feel if we upset a student? How would we feel? How would he feel if a student has a negative experience from the madrasa? And no matter how many resources we have, how much finances we have or not, what it all does come down to is that love for the children. Okay, we can't give them the resources if we don't understand, and this is going for all madrasas. If we can't understand how special education needs work, the very minimum is the love that we give to each and every child, not the ones who are good at their sabak, not just the ones who are good at certain things, but no, every single child is an ocean. Okay, there's so much depth inside every single one of them, and it's the teacher who needs to facilitate that and who needs to take that out. And Prophet ﷺ said, "An-nasu ma'adin kama'adin al-dhahabi wal-fidda," that people are like mines, like the mines of gold and silver. And it's the teacher's job and responsibility to be that miner, to find that gold and silver in every single child. So I think it's important that we keep this in mind. You don't know about special needs until now. I mean, we need to create this awareness and learn about this. But until then, the bare minimum we can do is give them, every single child, that love that they deserve, so that later on, when they're 20, 21, and they make their decision on which worldview they will follow, it's not the secular liberal, but rather the Islamic. And hopefully the madrasas would have played a role in that positive experience that they've had. Otherwise, in this country especially, they have a choice. They can follow either way, right? And if they're always getting positive experiences at school and not in madrasa, that is, I think, very, very dangerous for us. And it's problematic in regards to the iman of children, of all children, but especially children with special educational needs. They are way more vulnerable at this. So this is my few bits on that. Back over to you, Ustadh Danyaal.
Yeah. No, totally agree, Sheikh. There's absolutely a big issue when it comes to protecting the iman of these children in the long run, from the moment they enter the makatib up until the moment they leave. We have a massive role to play. I think going back to our first webinar, Molana Hamid, where we mentioned a large portion of Muslims are ending up in prison, and even I can't remember the exact statistic now, but a large portion of that had speech and language and communication needs. So there's a link. That there is a link here in terms of the role we play into getting these individuals special individuals becoming flourishing members of society in the long run. Molana, do you have anything to add?
No, I think just a point that you mentioned about the resources. I think one of the fears of a lot of madaris is that they don't have the resources to open a special needs class. Now, I think that's a bit of a myth, because I know if you think about it, I'm just doing a typical sort of example of fees. I don't know what the fees are in London, but up north here in Blackburn, probably about £6-7. £6-7 times by 30, right? You could do the maths. How much is that going to generate? The teacher doesn't get that full salary, but surely you can use part of that amount of money to open a special needs class where you've got a very small class. So the resources are there. So those makatibs who say that we don't have the resources, we don't know where. I'm not saying it costs us loads. It doesn't actually cost so much. One of the things that we promote at Tuyoorul Jannah is look for things which are free. You'll find so many things which are free, right? This is probably our Gujarati mentality, yeah. That we'll look for things which are free. Now we'll go on to Twinkle, we'll print stuff from there. There's loads of resources on there that you can just find, and you just adapt it. You can edit it. A lot of the documents on there are editable, so you can do it and almost Islamify it. Put an Islamic slant to it. You don't need to necessarily create something new. It's just about saying, okay, I'm gonna get this. Or you can go to a pound shop. You don't need to go and buy the most expensive resources. You don't need to buy an old singing and dancing kind of resource. You can buy something which is very, very simple, and you can use that. A lot of the Appa Yasmin Yaqub, who previously mentioned about Lego therapy. Again, that's the resource. She used to work for us as well, and what she used to do was bring those little Legos and put the flashcards on top of it and play a game with it, and that's what it is. You're not spending loads of money on it. You can use household things. You can look around your own house to see what can be used. It's just about having creativity in your mind and thinking, okay, I can think outside the box. I can use this. This is how I can teach it. So it can be taught, and you don't need to spend buckets loads of money to run a class as well.
Absolutely. I just wanted to mention one point on the finances, Sheikh, is that what I've noticed and what I've come across is in a lot of mosques, what tends to happen is the money that's generated via the maktab, a portion of that goes to the mosque, as in the what do you call it? Just the running of the mosque. I very strongly believe that there needs to be a separate pot of funding just for education, because what is the point? What is the point of the building if the people using the building are not benefiting from it? So I think it's important that there needs to be a special fund for each masjid which goes towards the education of our children. Because if we're not educating the children, and if we're not spending on the children, a decade down the line, you're not going to have people in those very same mosques. So it's very important that we spend more on our children. I think that should be one of the highest expenditures we have on our children, on our future, and especially the future of Islam in Britain. There was one thing I wanted to just bring up, and this was this point here, which I've brought on the screen. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to have children with special educational needs, and they teach us new things. That's such a beautiful thing, right? That that our children who, and the way we, Molana, the way we look at children with special needs is we don't think that they are different, okay, in the sense that they are abnormal. Rather, they have a different way of approaching the world. They have a different
Viewing the world,
window that they look through. Yeah, they have a different window that they look through, and it's mainly and you know, if you look at people like Einstein, okay, he had severe special needs, and it was he who one of the greatest scientists who changed the world. Right, and change many worldviews. So it's these children who are thinking from a different perspective that are ultimately going to go and change the world. And we as Muslims need to do as much as we can for our children who have these different, beautiful, wonderful ways of looking at the world.
I definitely agree with you, Mona.
There's another, there's quite a few interesting comments as well. And especially when it comes to, and I think it's written by Katiba Writes, just in general about Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Yeah, that Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he, you know, if we look back at his method, there were so many Sahaba who had special needs. So Abdullah ibn Maktoum radiyallahu anhu, who was a blind Sahabi, but he was one of the main mu'adhins of the Masjid al-Nabawi. And even, you know, there's verses of the Quran about him. Where Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked to focus more on Hazrat Abdullah ibn Maktoum radiyallahu anhu. So definitely, so it's not a matter of we're modernizing. Actually, it's a matter of going back to our own principles, which are already there for us to read. Why have we moved away from them? And this is the question that every single madrasa needs to ask themselves. We've got a comment here from Sultana Khan. Maktab teachers need training, and it is really simple to integrate visuals to keep the children motivated and engaged. Absolutely. Differentiating is not difficult. And if you have a lesson plan for every lesson, right, and you slowly start differentiating for those particular students who have special needs or who see the world differently, slowly and surely you'll get used to it. And not just that, you will know the best way your child learns. So definitely, I think it is just about doing. And that's something that I feel a lot of the madrasa teachers are afraid of, just that extra doing. And
can I add something there, Molana Hamid? Sorry to interrupt you, but you've obviously brought me in a good few years ago to look at lesson plans, specifically to look at differentiation, right? And what I've seen is that with the teachers, the more they did it, the easier it became. I was putting in less effort into differentiating for them and just giving them more advice, and the teachers sort of picked it up secondhand. It became second nature to them. That's just one thing I wanted to add to that point, Molana Hamid. So, sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. So so it is not difficult. Okay, and one thing I just wanted to throw before we go back to Molana Zubair, inshallah. When I was also, so I myself was a mainstream secondary school teacher in some of the schools, but I also was teaching at a maktab as well. And one of the things I found very, very interesting was just the fact that in schools, the children are not sitting on the floor, the teacher's not sitting on the floor, he's standing up. And therefore, that whole passion is there whilst you're standing. And, you know, you can do a lot of activities. And when I used to go to maktab, and, you know, when you sit down on the floor, it's almost like about 60% of your energy is taken away, and you're just sitting there in one place. And that kind of doesn't enable for more activities to take place. So there's very small things like this. Just even the way we change the structure of the classroom, the actual environment that the students are working in, the lighting, you know, these small things can change. It starts with, we need to make a change. We need to change the way we've been thinking. It's incredibly important that we do this. And I'm just going to end on this point, and then we'll get a summary from Molana Zubair and also yourself, Ustadh Danyaal. So this is going to be my last point that I wanted to mention. And I always like to go back to history and look at the writings in history. So going to Ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah, who has written his magnum opus on Al-Muqaddimah, and you will find that he almost plays the role of today's modern Ofsted, right? He goes to Al-Andalus, then he goes to Al-Maghrib, to Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt and the East. And then he writes a summary of the madrasas of each empire. And then it's very interesting how he talks about Morocco being a place where only the Quran is focused on. There's nothing else that they focus on. And if you cannot recite the Quran, that's it. You can therefore not get into mathematics, you can't get into other subjects. And then he explains how in Al-Andalus, there's way more than that. There's poetry, there's science, there's so much more going on. And then you have the likes of Al-Qurtubi and, you know, so many scholars who are coming from there, and Ibn al-Rushd, who we all know about and hear about. And then he says that in Tunisia, it's very similar to Al-Andalus. And one of the reasons was because due to you know, the Muslims being expelled and also the Jews being expelled from Al-Andalus, many of them came all the way to Tunisia. So they copied and almost, you can say, pasted the system from Al-Andalus into Tunisia. The reason I've mentioned this is because we've also done the same thing, but I think we've done it the other way around. Okay, and if we look at Morocco, for instance, I think for them learning the Quran itself was absolutely fine, and that was because learning the Quran by itself was fine. Okay, my daughter's just come in, so she's like trying to get my, but that's absolutely fine.
You
So,
get a wave.
yeah, do you want to give a wave? She's very shy, so.
Assalamualaikum barakah.
Assalamualaikum. Shock
Right,
now.
So with Morocco, you know, because it was Muslim country, and everyone living there was Muslim. So if they didn't pick up teachings of Islam in the madrasa, they could always pick it up later on with their uncles, aunties, and the environment. Whereas that was not the case in Al-Andalus, because Muslims were a ruling minority in Al-Andalus, so they really had to up their game in a land where majority were non-Muslims. What's happened to us now, and I'll finish on this point, we've also done a copy and paste for the past half a century, but it's been the other way around, where we've got our makatib and madrasas back home in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and also the Arab countries. And most of the focus is on teaching the Quran, which is fine. And again, because they are majority Muslim countries, so their context is very different, because they can learn Islam in various different other ways. But what we've done is, and I'm saying this because I had a friend once who said to me that when he goes into a mosque and a maktab, as soon as he walks into a class or into the hall, it feels like that he has stepped into India or Pakistan, right? Because it's the same thing which has never been changed for some time. Yeah. Okay. So basically, what's happened is that all we've done is we've copied the system in back home in India, Pakistan, and we've just pasted it here. Initially, that's fine because that's all we knew 50 years ago. But the point is, are we going to continue that forever and ever and ever, or are we going to say no? You know, we have a context here which is concerning for our children and the future of the iman of our children and Islam in general. And I think it's the maktabs that have to play that crucial role. And one of the main things that maktabs can do is to start differentiating their work, looking at children as beautiful, wonderful individuals that need to be facilitated, that need to be helped on their journey to following Islam, inshallah. So Molana, if I can have maybe a summary from yourself, and then Ustadh Danyaal, and well, actually we have Ustadh Danyaal first, and then we can finish on you, Molana, at the end.
Just from myself, Jazakallah to Molana Zubair for coming on and having this discussion with us. It's refreshing to have another voice on this platform, but also to think about that, you know, some of the approaches that you've taken in your madrasa and sort of the similarities and differences that we have between our two madrasas. It's been lovely to hear. Alhamdulillah, and jazakallah to all of the viewers and listeners who've been putting in the comments and questions as well. It's helped the discussion come along a lot more. Alhamdulillah, I feel like we can continue for hours and hours. Alhamdulillah. It's a topic which I think needs a lot more thought and discussion on. But jazakallah to Molana Zubair. Molana Zubair, any final thoughts?
Well, first of all, jazakallah for having me and inviting me on. Appreciate it. I think the message I just want to give everyone is that we, as maktabs, as Muslims, as teachers, as individuals, we need to take responsibility and the responsibility is that we need to learn how to teach special needs children. I'm not saying the severe end, but those people who just need a little bit of reasonable adjustments, like the law says, that's what we need to look at and how we do that. I'm not going to sit here promoting our organization saying we do the teacher training. It's not about that. It's about you can find whichever way you can to educate your staff, educate your teachers, and say, look, this is how you do it. Access courses online. There are loads of SEN courses online. There's loads of things you can self-teach now. People learn loads of things through YouTube, and do research around your individual person and say, okay, this is how you teach a special needs child. This is what resources are needed. This is what I can do. And start implementing those things. I think that's my thing. And at the end of the day, we are going to be held accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's my drive and my passion. And think, I don't want to be held accountable on the day of judgment to say that you had all the resources, you had the internet, you could have researched into what you do, how to teach a special needs child, and you didn't do it because you were too lazy, you didn't want to do it. And I think that's my point, and I'd like to end on that. And just a special thanks to my wife, who's the rock behind this as well. She doesn't take enough credit for it. And all the staff that we have an amazing team, who give hours of dedication, and without them we're nothing. And to all the parents who send their children, I know it's very hard for them to let go of their children sometimes, but even they, some of our children drive a half an hour just to come from Madrasah, so they'll come out of town and stay with them, so they give a lot of sacrifices as well. I'll end on that point. Jazakallah khair to everyone.
Jazakallah khairan from myself as well, Sheikh, for giving us your time. And I think it's been very, very fruitful. And it just goes to show that the madrasas who are trying, so a lot of the things that you've mentioned, our madrasa is doing it as well. So once people do put their minds together, you can get it right. And that's the important message that came out as well, mashallah. And just on the point that you mentioned about your wife as well, and I think I really want to emphasize on this, that the role of sisters in the future of Islam in Britain is absolutely crucial. I can very easily and comfortably say, if it was not for the sisters or the female staff at Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery, we would never, as a madrasa, never ever be doing what we are doing now, or the level we have reached. We wouldn't be nowhere without our female staff. So Jazakallah to all of our female staff for being there. And I think that's another point that madaris need to focus on, is females and the skill set that they bring as well. So Jazakallah khairan to them. Jazakallah for all the comments that have been coming up. I found them very, very, very helpful, very useful. Jazakallah for commenting, and Jazakallah for also informing us about various types of special needs and different points along those lines as well. There was one comment at the start which I completely forgot about, and I think I'll just bring that up now. Can you tell us a bit about the Fatima Elizabeth why we named it Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery? So Fatima Elizabeth was one of the most documented, or you can say first female Victorian Muslims. So she used to be Frances Elizabeth Murray, and then she accepted Islam around the 1880s. So she was one of the first females to accept Islam in our country, and she then, gave her life to Islam. However, unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 35, so she was quite young. But her story is an interesting story. It resonates with many of us who are struggling with many aspects of being Muslim today, in terms of Islamophobia, in terms of us learning the Quran. I mean, she took the Quran home. Her parents, her mother wanted to throw out the Quran. She had to run into her room, lock up her room, and she read the Quran in English from cover to cover, and she came out as a Muslim. So we were inspired by her story, and we are doing more research on her as we speak now as well, to find out more about her, and hopefully to write a book on her at some point very near in the future, inshallah. So that's why Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery is another word for a place of thinking and a place of learning. We felt school, there's too much. I mean, schools, there's so much focus on certain things like exams and certain regimented ways of learning that we wanted to be different from. We wanted this to be a place of learning, a place of thinking, a place of reflection for all our students to come and be themselves. So that's just to answer that question. Jazakallahu khair, Molana. Jazakallahu khair, Ustadh Danyaal. Inshallah, one day, hopefully after the lockdown, we shall meet in person, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair.